Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Chris Fregly. And thanks for joining us. We have what I'm calling a pop-up webinar off cycle, since the next couple weeks will be full of Christmas and holiday joy. There's a lot of folks out, and I wanted to get this material into your hands as quickly as possible. We just came out of the big AWS reInvent conference from last week in Las Vegas, and a lot of exciting new releases and things that I've had to keep quiet about for the last, year, but more specifically the last few months as everything came together. So huge shout out to all the product managers and engineers and every single person that was part of these launches. I have witnessed this now for the past 4 years, and I'm always amazed how everything comes together right at the very end. And with so many moving parts and so many interconnections between all these services, it's really always quite amazing to me to see how these pieces fit together. And, all the way from the top leadership down to the folks writing the code. It's just absolutely amazing. And there's a lot of folks that worked a lot of hours. I know me personally, basically haven't stopped working since probably September, every night and weekend. And I can say that about my direct peers and, most of the folks that were involved here. So let's get right into it. I do want to remind everyone that we just released, and in fact, this is now shipping, this Generative AI on AWS book. This was a collaboration between me and my teammates, Antje Bart and Shelby Eigenbroda. Shelby is based in Denver. Antje is based in the Bay Area here near me, which is really cool. Antje and I also collaborated on this crazy book that we decided to put together when we first joined AWS back in, we started working on it maybe 2019, 2020, and we released it in 2021, called Data Science on AWS. You can actually get them together at a pretty good price. One cool thing about the Generative AI, the new book, is that we did convince the O'Reilly folks, based on the success of the first book, to actually print the second book in full print, full color, which was always one of my dreams. So after I was able to finally get a book deal with O'Reilly, my next dream had to be getting it in color, and you can only do that under certain circumstances. And so it is, pretty cool. We do have quite a lot of visualizations. And okay, the other thing that we're doing unique this time around is we're actually live streaming this to YouTube. This is something I've been trying to get working with Zoom and Zoom support. I've been a Zoom user for, I don't know, 5 years or something now, and I could never get it to properly live stream. So I spent quite a lot of time over the last couple of weeks getting the live stream support, or the Zoom support folks, to help me out. So we got it working. So also we will be posting this. Let me type it in the chat here. All these videos go to youtube.generative.ai on AWS.com. So this video will be posted here. I'll also try to get the slides out. I'll put a link either in, the YouTube comments or somewhere on social media here. So probably LinkedIn. All right, let's get started. And hopefully you can still see this. Let me just double check here. Actually, real quick, I want to keep an eye on the live stream since it is sort of the first time doing this here. Okay, so let me actually do something a little bit strange here. I'm just going to minimize that, and I'm going to reduce the comments here, just because I don't fully trust this system here yet. Let me hide my little toolbar here, and we'll get going. I've got a lot of slides. Note that I will be recording this right up to the end. So even if I do go over, I'm going to record the full thing here and post the whole thing. So don't worry about that. We will get through this. Okay. All right. And let me shrink this a tiny bit here so I could fit the whole slide in. Okay. So my name is Chris Fregly, Principal Solution Architect, Generative AI Startups. I just switched over to the Gen AI Startups. We have a whole ton of them here in the Bay Area, and it was a really unique opportunity that popped up. Ansha, because she's been working nonstop, has decided to pass on today's session. We didn't even really plan this, I think, until yesterday. So I'm going to do the full session today. So, but yeah, if you do have a startup, whether or not you're in the Bay Area or not, feel free to reach out to me, and we can give you some support on Gen AI. All right. So some high-level themes, and most of this is going to be generative AI. However, Gen AI on its own is not very helpful without data and without security and without networking and storage and all kinds of good stuff. So there's also going to be this new term called limitless that was introduced, I believe, by I believe it might have been Peter DeSantis on the Monday night. So he's a pretty big deal within AWS. He's been speaking at reInvent, as far as I can remember, and his talks tend to be very technical. So we'll get into some of those details here in a bit. And limitless is, if you think of the equivalent of serverless is to compute, limitless is to databases and data stores, and to not even have to think about nodes within your databases or the amount of storage, just sort of limitless storage. Okay. We're going to talk about Amazon Bedrock, of course. We're going to talk about agents and virtual assistants and this new product that was released called Amazon Q that is pretty slick. Also, of course, you can't talk about generative AI without vector stores, and we just released something called knowledge bases as well for Bedrock. There's a whole lot of new or sort of renewed buzz around semantic similarity search, or just called semantic search. Also semantic caching, the ability to cache queries that are similar. So this whole field of information retrieval is, from the 1970s and even before, is coming back with fancy new terms. And we're going to revisit some of those concepts in the context of these new releases. Okay, and also more zero ETL. This was actually a theme from last year as well too, where we're starting to see we very often have to move data between data sources, between databases into our, data warehouse, into Redshift, and or from, Kafka streaming data into Redshift. And the idea, instead of, or in addition to building, top-notch, best-in-class sort of ETL tools, we've also been really focused on what's called zero ETL. Okay, and this is where you essentially have to write almost no code, and think of like drag and drop, the ability to just get the data from one store into the other store, and this really saves a whole lot of coding and code maintenance and schema evolution and all sorts of things. Really helps out. Of course, always with every reInvent, with every release throughout the year, even we have additional security, networking, storage options, compute options. We'll talk about those today specifically for the high performance computing, generative machine learning. Okay, and then of course always there are going to be improvements in cost control and cost monitoring, also application monitoring, logging, and even how to use Gen AI and machine learning for these different types of things. Okay, and let's see here. I just want to make sure the live stream is keeping up. The live stream might be a little bit behind, but I'm going to keep on chugging here. All right, this is very, very high level. And what there are 5 pages of these types of launch summaries here. So this is everywhere from analytics to application integration, cloud operations, even some blockchain. We even saw some fun blockchain stuff here. I'm going to skip through these just sort of briefly. These will all be in the deck. Let's see, some EKS improvements and even front-end web and mobile. Folks have been super busy. I'll actually dive into some of the new compute types here as well. All right. So, and also databases, lots of good stuff here. Really like quite a lot of vector search and zero ETL, like I had mentioned here, some serverless, and here's going to be limitless right there. And Gen AI, of course, I remember, I think it was 2020 when the entire reInvent seemed to be dominated by machine learning and AI releases. And, fast forward a few years, we've got this, heavy focus on generative AI. This is what customers are asking for. And so this is what we have been focusing on. Not to leave out, of course, IoT and, sort of traditional machine learning, some new inference containers here that have the upgraded NVIDIA TensorRT inference server to, for really, really low latency generative inference and generations. And we also have a redesigned SageMaker Studio, which I have a screenshot or two here that I'll show. So SageMaker Studio continues to evolve. We have new support now for VS Code, Visual Studio Code within SageMaker Studio, which was a very, very high ask from our customers. While they do like Jupyter and Jupyter Lab, they also have a whole set of users that are using VS Code, me included as well. Okay. Lots of security, lots of compliance, a big focus, by the way, on responsible AI, which I'll show some of the key features here in a bit. Lots of new storage. I do want to highlight, we now have Amazon FSx for OpenZFS. So OpenZFS is a very popular high performance distributed file system. So really happy to see focus put on that. Also, the Amazon EFS, which is going to be managed NFS, essentially network files storage. This also sees a big bump in IOPS. So input output operations per second, 250,000, which is incredible. I remember the days of this being like in the order of 60,000, 30,000. Now we're up to 250. So there's also some really cool. There's a new way to store data in S3 that I'll show, which is called Express One Zone. This actually was one of our top blog views here from our reInvent blogs. This is really, really powerful. So Express One Zone storage is really designed for, like very, very low latency data access from object storage. Okay. And so I'll get more into the details here in a bit, but just know that when you do reduce down to a single zone, you have less availability, meaning if that zone goes down, you may lose some data, but it's designed for systems that are doing that availability, high availability at the application layer. Okay. And so I'll get more into that here in a bit. All right, let's get right into it. Generative AI Stack. So the term FM, by the way, you'll see this is really a generic, well, not a generic term, it's a specific term. It's called foundation model. If you've been paying attention to generative AI over the last year or so, you've probably been hearing quite a lot about LLMs, large language models. Well, those are really specific to text and to language. The term FM is a more generic term for not just language, but also multimodal is the term, and that could be images, video, audio models as well. But the term foundation means that they have been pre-trained, usually by folks like Meta, Amazon, our partners like AI21 and Cohere and Anthropic. These are folks that have been spending quite a lot of compute hours and research hours designing what's called foundation models, right? And then typically, customers then build upon those foundation models, right? And train and fine tune their own models on top of that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some new tools that we have to actually build on top of these FMs, or even train these foundation models yourself with the infrastructure pieces here that AWS provides. All right, and here's just another deeper level here, Amazon Q. So there's sort of the application layer here that sits on top of these foundation models or customized foundation models. And then there's tools to actually build them. There's going to be phrases like guardrails that is, really part of the responsible AI, the ability to block any bad inputs coming in or block any bad outputs that are coming out, bad could be harmful, could be dishonest, could be fake news, ways to essentially put what's called guardrails in and out of these models. Okay, and then I'm going to talk about some additional infrastructure components here. So of course, we've got some new GPUs. We've got the next generation Trainium, which is our custom hardware that's purpose-built really for generative AI and for these sort of machine learning workloads, large-scale machine learning workloads. Inferentia, so this is really the inference equivalent to the purpose-built hardware to Trainium. So Trainium, you can also do inference, by the way, with Trainium. However, the Inferentia chipset, and there's Inferentia 1 and 2, have been designed more for the inference or the prediction workloads. Talk about some more SageMaker things. We're going to mention EC2 capacity blocks. This is a huge feature here that has been asked by a lot of folks. And what this lets us do is, or lets customers do is reserve, let's say they want to run a training job for 14 days, but they don't want to necessarily like reserve a full year of these GPUs, because they might only be running the training job for 14 days, and then maybe 6 months later they're going to run another training job, and maybe that one runs for 28 days, and so the ability to actually reserve these at a finer grained time span versus 1 year, 3 year reserved instance, and then so yeah, that's really cool. Some new advancements with our Neuron SDK, which really is the code, the drivers for Trainium, Inferentia, and there's a bunch of optimizations in Neuron as well. All right, so chat applications at work. So you can interpret that how you want. At work, basically doing work for you. So there's this new service, Amazon Q, got a lot of buzz. The set of blog posts that were released around Amazon Q for reInvent were actually very popular, very high up on the viewer list. And this was released as of last week. And really, Q gives you the ability to provide a chat interface, so you could chat with your data, you could chat and get answers to common questions, and really Q is being layered or being integrated into a lot of the AWS and the Amazon services, including the actual AWS console itself, which is the main entry point typically for most builders when they're building AWS applications. So you can ask questions about different APIs. You can even troubleshoot when you get an error back, for example, something obscure maybe about your VPC or your subnets. You can actually click a button typically that says troubleshoot with Amazon Q, and it'll give you more information. So really cool to see this come together. I've been watching this service get built for the better part of the year, and it's just absolutely amazing to see this all come together. Okay, and so think of it like your AWS expert. It can also be your business expert and give you cost savings tips. You can use it with QuickSight. This is our sort of BI tool, right? Like visualization tool for business intelligence. You could use Amazon Q with Amazon Connect, which is call center type of application or service that's offered by AWS. And so lots of different things. Also, I saw this pop up, and I actually didn't even know this until the release, but this popped up within Amazon Redshift, which is our data warehouse, where you can actually use Amazon Q to generate SQL statements for you. So can learn about your Redshift schema, and this is all private. This is not shared, with the Amazon Q service itself. It's not used to improve the Amazon Q service at all. This is all private to your account, and can help you actually write better SQL and better queries against Redshift. So pretty cool stuff. And I think this might be a little video here. So, and it doesn't have any sound, but essentially you can ask, Q, now this is within Redshift, to generate some SQL based on the database that you have. This is some ticket database that has, venues and ticket sales and different events. And all of this just a few clicks away. It can show you the schema. It can inspect and actually help you optimize these different queries as well too. Okay, so pretty cool stuff. Also, something I didn't realize either, I'm like pretty connected within AWS, but I don't always know everything that's happening. It's just too hard with, such a large company, but this is why we do these recaps, and this is why I like to do these get a hold of these slides and talk to these folks. So you can also use Amazon Q within AWS Glue. So Glue is a very, very popular AWS service, very, very heavily used. A lot of features, come directly from customers, and Q is a nice, fit for this. So this is not quite out yet, but it will be coming soon. And again, you could use Amazon Q to essentially do Spark queries and to help you write different types of like scripts to do data processing with AWS Glue. So pretty cool. I actually know quite a lot of customers that I work with personally that use Glue, and having Q right alongside here to do this for you is pretty slick. So yeah, pretty excited about that. Oops. Okay. And if you've ever spent any time within AWS and you've tried to set up your own VPCs, and there's always one more thing that you have to do, it seems like, or one thing that you forgot to do or didn't configure properly. And so, 17 years of AWS knowledge and bug reports and improvements and feature enhancements and documentation, all of this is now embedded and there for you to query within the actual AWS console itself to help you become a better, systems architect, solution architect, a better application developer, builder. And so, pretty cool. And I think there's a video here. I might just kind of skip through. Oh yeah, so here's an example where we're trying to do something, and you could troubleshoot with Q. So right in line, I could click that button up here in the upper right, which is troubleshoot with Amazon Q, and then this will actually analyze your specific error, all private within your account, and can tell you something, or can advise you on how to actually fix that error. So I sure wish I could have had that over the last 12 years of using using AWS products, because it really would have saved me quite a lot of time instead of going out to out to like Stack Overflow and all that, trying to figure it out. All right, so here's just some more examples of that. I'm gonna jump through here, and also, okay, I think this is an example here of Code Whisperer. Let me zoom out a tiny bit here so we see it. So this is an example of actually a plugin for VS Code that is called the Amazon Code Whisperer, and typical thing here where you can just generate code on the fly. You could just start typing comments. Here we're using Q within the VS Code environment. So this is a plugin for VS Code that can then give you more advice on sort of best practices on how to use DynamoDB, and can figure out the context that you're in here. Here it sees that we are using a DynamoDB table, and it can start to give you different pieces of advice to optimize this code. So we're going to see this more and more, certainly throughout the year as customers ask for it. One thing I did want to mention here, I've seen people use Q and use Amazon Code Whisperer, as a way to actually help upgrade Java. And, this is something I haven't really worked with Java in, quite a few years, but I do remember back in the day, going from one version of Java to the next was actually pretty tricky. And here it's just a couple, commands away. And this is part of Amazon Q's code transformation feature here. And can also help you go from Windows to Linux, which is pretty slick. If you have to do, these are typically one-time type of transformations, but you may have a lot of code or a lot of scripts that need to be converted over. Okay. You can even connect to other data sources like your Salesforce or Google Drive, Microsoft 365, all these Zendesk, Gmail, Slack, ServiceNow, and you can ask questions about those data sources using Amazon Q. And of course, once again, all within your account, all within the access controls that you are authorized to see. Okay, so I think we've kind of hammered this home here. I'll probably move on, but this is our BI tool QuickSight here, where you could use natural language to ask questions, and QuickSight will then generate these dashboards for you, which is really nice. Big time saver for folks that just want to get answers to business questions versus, fighting through SQL or even drag and drop interfaces, which could get clunky sometimes. Contact Center in the cloud, also another good place to use Q here. I'm going to skip through this, but, just think of anything that you would typically do with code or with APIs. Think of it now that you can do it with natural language. That's the whole, really in my mind, that's the whole benefit of generative AI, is the ability to interact with systems and with software the way that we interact with, humans and friends and family. Okay, so I'm going to keep going here. Bedrock. This is really, the sort of primary way. When you want to start using generative AI on AWS, this really is the best place to start. So yes, Amazon Bedrock, we have a whole bunch of choices of these FMs, these foundation models. We've got the enterprise grade security privacy built in, of course, from day one. You can even customize these foundation models specific to your organization's data. That was actually the talk I did at reInvent, where I talked about fine-tuning and uploading PDFs from your domain, from your company, from your G drives, whatever, or you can send them to Amazon Bedrock and actually fine-tune models with your data. Okay, and here's a bunch of partners that we have. We also have our own models, Amazon Titan Text. There's also a multimodal like image and like combined text image model that I'll show in a later slide here. But probably one of the most common or popular open source models that we have, or open models, is Llama, and specifically Llama 2 and the 70 billion version, which is now available. Also recently, Claude 2.1 with a 200,000 token context window. This means you can provide 200,000, I believe this translates to like a 300 or 500 page book or something that you can pass in on one single request and ask questions. So we're starting to see a lot more advancements here. So yeah, and then some of our other partners here: Stability AI, Cohere, AI21, Anthropic. Okay, and so this really right now is the complete set of the Titan foundation models. So we've got the embeddings, which I'll talk about in a bit. We have a text light that's really geared towards, summarization, maybe some copywriting. And then Titan Text Express, which is, more sort of conversational, human, like assistant type of stuff. And then multimodal. So this is where we can start to introduce like images and, generate. And then the other model is this image generator, which is pretty fun to use, where you can generate very, very photorealistic images with just a few lines of text. Okay, so there's that Anthropic. There's the Llama 2 70 billion, which is a very, very popular model amongst the customers that I specifically work with. Okay, and of course, Bedrock has all kinds of integrations and the SOC compliance 1, 2, and 3. All the benefits of using AWS for your enterprise applications or your startup applications or whatever application that you're building. You've got the CloudWatch monitoring. This is where you can monitor metrics and custom dashboards, logs, CloudTrail, which is really monitoring activity in and out of your virtual private cloud or in and out of your application, which is important for certain regulations where you need to be able to show who's been accessing what in your applications. Okay, text embeddings and multimodal embeddings. These are actually pretty important. These are used to do searches, if I'm trying to do personalization, if I'm trying to generate recommendations. So like whenever you see the word embedding, what we're talking about here typically is converting something that's a human understandable concept, like an image or a paragraph or a document, and converting it into something numeric, where we can then start to apply linear algebra and all those fun techniques to find similarity. Okay, and so I can say, find me an image that's similar to this set of images, find me text that's similar to this blob of text that I'm updating. We support 25 languages. Let's see. And lots of work has been put into responsible AI here in these situations so that we're not generating, bad images or bad text or like malicious text, malicious, inappropriate images, that kind of thing. All right. So here's an example and this actually came out of our book, which I was pretty excited about to see it make it into one of the keynotes. And this was actually created by Ansha. Yeah, Ansha loves iguanas. She lived in Costa Rica for a few years during her college years. And so, yeah, if you just type, show me an image of an iguana, and then you can start to change the background. And you can change the color of the iguana and, all kinds of fun stuff here. So if you see something with an iguana, just know it probably came from Ansha. In fact, I think she was even talking about getting a tattoo of an iguana, which I would be curious to hear if she did that, potentially in Las Vegas, maybe last week even. Okay, when we want to customize these models, so let's take the Amazon Titan models, for example, we can fine tune, meaning we could, just make some small changes. Maybe the way that that Titan, Titan can be chatty and can give somewhat chatty responses, which is good in most cases. But sometimes you just want like a very crisp single line answer. And so, or maybe you want Titan to generate like JSON responses versus, natural language. And so what we could do is we can fine tune Titan to, give it a bunch of examples, maybe, 500 examples from our domain that's specific to our, use case. And we can then customize Titan and actually create a custom version that will then start to respond with JSON or with smaller, crisper answers. Okay. There's also this concept called continued pre-training. This is where you really want to introduce more data or more knowledge into the model. And keep in mind, this is actually relatively difficult to to find data that these models have not seen already. Okay, and I did a fun trick during reInvent, and this is actually part of the book's GitHub repo. So all the code is public, where our book was not yet out. It like just came out, and so I know that these models have not seen the book because the book actually physically was not printed yet, or it wasn't available. And so during reInvent, my talk, I actually um, um, uh, I used continued pre-training, and I gave Titan my PDF, all private to my account, not shared with the Titan service. And I continued to pre-train and introduce new knowledge into Titan that used the concepts from our book. And so I did a before and after, and like you can very clearly see that Titan actually learned a little bit more about our book, and specifically the phrases that we were using and the examples that we gave, just by uploading that PDF and doing what's called continued pre-training. Most people don't actually know too much about continued pre-training. I do encourage you, check out the talk, check out the book. We do cover this. It's really when you have just a whole bunch of unstructured data and you just want to feed it in. Maybe you have a bunch of financial documents that are, private to your customers, that you want to then pre-train and sort of introduce new concepts. Typically, people talk about how you would do, like medical domains and legal domains. But really, quite honestly, these models now, I have seen so much data. Maybe that was the case 1 or 2 years ago, where these models were not, didn't know much about like the medical domain or specific, ways to write prescriptions and shorthand and things. But yes, at this point, these models have seen pretty much everything that's out on the internet, and it's almost more difficult to give it content that it has not already seen. Okay. The other thing, so I started here talking about fine tuning and continued pre-training as a way to customize. There's really a simpler and quite often really the place to start, which is called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Fancy term. Again, we're just doing information retrieval here. And what we're doing is we are essentially using the foundation model, the large language model, for example, as a way to understand the text that I am about to give it. Okay, so stepping back a sec, the way, what RAG is I would actually go out, I would retrieve data, maybe from the book PDF, and just retrieve a segment that is relevant to the question that I'm asking. So if I'm asking specifically about how to best use quantization with PyTorch, or with Llama 2, I can go out and just retrieve that data. And there's frameworks like LangChain, and there's even now integrations in Bedrock called knowledge bases that can do all this for you. So it's not as difficult as it was even just a few months ago. But you would just retrieve that segment and then pass the question that I'm asking with the section of the document, like maybe it's 10 pages of the document, or maybe it's just like a few paragraphs. All of that goes into the LLM, and now the LLM can just focus on that content. So what we're doing here is we are introducing new concepts to the LLM, sort of at runtime, or like dynamically, right, in real time. And so this is absolutely critical when we're trying to search news, or trying to get sports scores, or things that are just very difficult to continue to train constantly, right? Like the other option is that we just continue to do fine tuning and pre-training, but we would have to do it every hour, every 30 minutes to have the updated information. So really the best place to start when you're trying to use these foundation models on your data is to start with retrieval augmented generation. I'll talk about the Bedrock knowledge bases here in a bit. That's really, in fact, that's the next section here. So knowledge bases for Amazon Bedrock. This is literally like the coolest, the most straightforward way to introduce new data into and to use the best of these foundation models. The fastest way to do it to just point to your data and to just start serving up answers to questions or um, uh, fun things like this. So this whole concept really comes down to vectors. Vectors is short for embedding vector. So, but these are all vectors in some high dimensional space. This is a two-dimensional space because I'm dealing with a computer screen and because I'm a simple human. But if this was a massive, 50,000, 100,000 dimension space, think of, a single paragraph or a single sentence, right? This is just showing single words, but a sentence or a concept would be one, line through this multi-dimensional, high-dimensional space. And when I have similar concepts, those similar concepts will end up in similar places within this vector space. And so this is how I can do searches, which what are classically called semantic similarity searches or just semantic searches. These are often much more powerful search, right, like searches than just keyword search, which is what a lot of like traditional out-of-the-box searching can do. And so vector support is now part of a whole bunch of services within AWS, a whole bunch of data stores. The one that I tend to work with the most, just specifically with the customers I've been dealing with recently, is Amazon OpenSearch. We also have it embedded within the Aurora database, Postgres and MySQL, and what else here? So yeah, OpenSearch serverless, also now supported by DocumentDB, which is sort of managed Mongo or similar to MongoDB. Also support within DynamoDB also. And so DynamoDB, is our NoSQL, sort of similar to Cassandra type of data store, right? There's also, I actually just got off a call right before this, hearing the latest on the Amazon MemoryDB for Redis. Okay, so Redis itself is a caching mechanism. It can think of it like a database that's in memory. That's highly scalable, and there's now vector search and vector storage capabilities within this MemoryDB powered by Redis. And then, of course, we have a whole bunch of partners too. We, for example, Pinecone. We've got straight up MongoDB, of course, Redis Enterprise, and so these are all different options, not just by us, like OpenSearch, but also by our, valued partners here. I actually do quite a lot with the Pinecone folks, and definitely check those, those partners out. Agents. So this is a really good one here. So agents, really, in my prediction, 2024. Where I think we will see an explosion of this sort of agent, sort of ecosystem. We have already seen it quite a lot this year, 2023. I think next year this is going to get even bigger and sort of exponentially bigger. This is really, think of it like your little sidekick, like a little personal sidekick or something that can do more complex tasks than just simple, right, like data retrieval, information retrieval. This, with agents, I can actually carry out, longer running tasks, more complicated tasks. And I'm using the foundation model, the large language model, or the multimodal model, the, like image or a video model, to carry out more complex tasks, to actually look at a document, tell me, maybe read an email, tell me if it's something I should pay attention to, or like automatically take action and respond to it, or query my calendar to see if that time's available, all kinds of possibilities here. So we did release, and this is GA now, so generally available. It's called Agents for Amazon Bedrock. And it's really, really simple to get started, and you can use custom code that can even access APIs that your like organization has created. So these are really, really fun to build. You would essentially select the foundation model that you want to use. Now, here's the trick to agents. You really want to use a foundation model that has has good reasoning capabilities. So my like other prediction for 2024 is we will spend less time, or we will start to shift our thinking for these foundation models less and less around what's actually stored within the, what's called parametric memory, what's stored within the parameters, the 70 billion parameters of these models, and we'll really start to think of these models more as reasoning engines, or reasoning like components. And so that's the trick here with these agents, is that they need to really understand what's going on and not just sort of repeat what they already know, or do pattern recognition and or just learning language type thing. They actually need to be able to reason through things. So and here's our famous Lambda functions. AWS Lambdas always tend to crop up here, and really power quite a lot of like applications. And so Lambdas pop up here in these agents when you're building them. And you can also select data sources, and these agents actually work pretty well with the knowledge bases as well, which I had mentioned before. Okay, so generate a sequence of steps. This is where the reasoning part of it happens here. It'll pull out the information that it needs to continue to the next step, or to actually carry out the action. Just call an API, write to a database, read from a database, and then okay. The other really big thing for 2024, and this has already been really big in 2023. I'm seeing a lot of startups, especially like now that I'm on the Gen AI startup team. A lot of startups focused on model evals, and this I think will also not just evaluate on our current benchmarks, right, where we're trying to make sure that the model can solve math problems, or can right, like understand language, but can also reason through more complicated math problems. And so I think that these evals will start to get more and more sophisticated, more and more realistic to humans, and will not stop at just information retrieval or problem solving, but will continue into carrying out agent tasks properly. So I think this whole field of evals is huge. It's very easy to get bogged down, especially with these newer technologies and newer concepts, in just kind of like building them and just getting them to work. The next level is actually making sure that they continue to work and can work for different use cases, can generalize very well. And that's why evals are so critical. Okay. So, tooling for the evaluation and more complex evaluation across your RAG, and across agents as well. Guardrails. So this, really falls under the sort of high level responsible AI. This is just one component of this. The ability to, filter any content, any harmful questions coming in, or requests that come into the model. You can actually just filter them right at the start, so that you aren't even being charged for something malicious, and then of course coming back right from Bedrock. So once again, Bedrock is a managed service by Amazon for generative AI. You can deploy custom models, you can deploy just the regular base foundation models, and you are charged on a per request, number of words coming in, number of what's called tokens coming in, number of tokens coming out. And so one of our cost savings techniques is to filter out harmful content, and don't even make the Bedrock request that if something malicious is coming in. You can also do things like redacting personally identifiable information. It looks like that's not out quite yet, but that is part of the guardrails ecosystem. I left a couple of these in because I thought they were cool, but I think I'm going to skip over them. There's a new feature there's a new plugin for VS Code that will help you build applications, on AWS, and also combined with Q can actually really, powerful way to build applications with not much coding experience. So, pretty cool stuff. There's also some what I would call blueprints. These fall under what's called CDK, which is our cloud development kits. Really, these are just ways to get a quick question answer system going. This one has Anthropic Claude V2. If I want to do a data ingestion pipeline for my knowledge bases using, open or for documents using OpenSearch. So this was actually something I didn't realize was coming. I don't know too many folks on the CDK team directly, so I didn't get this like info firsthand. I heard at the same time everybody else did, but it's pretty cool. Really, really quick way to get started. There's also now Rust and then Kotlin support for the AWS SDKs, kind of interesting. Step functions, if you're building complex workflows, now has native Bedrock integration, which is pretty slick. VS Code, like I said, is now an option from within SageMaker Studio, so not just notebooks, but yeah, also VS Code. And yeah, actually VS Code itself supports notebooks, so you could potentially use VS Code on Studio using VS Code's notebooks. So ponder that a bit. Okay, let's get to the fun stuff here, the hardware. We now have the NVIDIA H100, which is the P5 series. Also on stage at the keynote was Jensen, from the CEO of NVIDIA. He was on there with the CEO of AWS, which is Adam Slipsky, and they announced that they also will be providing the H200 sometime next year. So right now the H100 is now available in the P5s. I still pretty heavily use the P4s just because I have access to them and have a lot of code written, and I do plan I'll probably like migrate over right after the new year to the P5s, and then once the H200s come out, then I'll start using those. H100 is really slick, by the way. This has, I believe, is this 80 gigs? And then I think the H of GPU RAM, and then the H200, I believe, is 140 gigs of GPU RAM, which is, pretty mind-blowing. Okay, Trainium Inferentia. I'm not going to spend too much time here. There's a whole ton of info about it, but there is now Trainium 2 that's coming in 2024. Claims to be 4 times faster than Trainium. 65 exaflops. At some point, I don't even know what these numbers mean, but it's pretty fast. So okay, and also this is something I've been working with. This is GA. I don't know why this is in small font here. I'll fix it real time, but this is generally available. It's called SageMaker Hyperpod, and what this is it's part of SageMaker. It's persistent clusters that you can spin up. I can spin up a cluster of 64 GPUs or 128 GPUs, P5s, whatever you want, even Trainium. I just got Trainium working over the weekend after reInvent within Hyperpod. It's pretty cool. And what we typically see customers use this for is for research clusters. And so we have a number of very, very well-known, I don't know which ones are public and which ones are not public references, but we have some very, very well-known names that are using Hyperpod that were in our beta program over the summer as we were building this service. And this lets you have a whole bunch of researchers on, you have a whole bunch of GPUs, you can be running training jobs all day, or you could just spin up these huge clusters and train your 70 billion or 180 billion parameter foundation model, over the course of a few months or 6 weeks, something like that. So Hyperpod's pretty slick. It is Slurm based, if you're familiar with Slurm, job scheduling system, and but you do actually have shell access into the cluster, and so you treat it just like any other sort of on-prem cluster or cluster, but as opposed to traditional SageMaker, which has been, like on demand or sorry, sort of job based, right? I would submit a SageMaker job, it would start up, it would spin up the cluster, then it would tear it down when it finished the job. with Hyperpod, these are persistent clusters, and this was a huge ask by a lot of our generative AI customers. Okay, Neuron is the SDK that is used for Trainium and Inferentia. These capacity blocks I had mentioned at the very beginning. So if you have a need to just train for 14 days or just 28 days, just to spin up a huge, block of like EC2 instances and then tear them down, capacity blocks might be for you. A lot of customers asking about this feature, and pretty cool. Also, so Graviton, very, very well known for cost savings, similar performance, 30% or 40% cheaper, and so this is the latest Graviton 4 is now available, and we actually use this quite a bit with other services like maybe OpenSearch. I've seen folks using Graviton pretty much all across all the like AWS services, and there's an instant cost savings that's there. So if you haven't had a chance yet to check out Graviton, definitely check those out. Here's an example, the new R8G. So the G is for Graviton instance type. If you want to try these out, it looks like these are in preview right now, but hopefully soon will be generally available. So, okay. A lot of AI throughout the services, creeping up in all parts of the Amazon service offerings, AWS service offerings, CloudWatch, pattern analysis, like log, like anomaly detection, metrics, like anomaly detection. Pretty cool. Here's a CloudWatch application signal. Here's something real, relatively like I actually thought this already was here. This falls into the category of releases for reInvent that I didn't even think that we needed this to be released because I thought it was already available. But you could now do batch gets from the secrets manager instead of individual gets at a time. We can also, there's something called Amazon Inspector that can inspect your Lambda code using generative AI and can point out, any potential data leaks or missing encryption or, any code snippets that may need improvements. Similar with containers. Okay, GuardDuty, IAM. Got some new improvements here, billing and cost management. I pay attention to this a lot because I get yelled at for using a lot of GPUs every month. And so I was really happy to see billing, more consolidated view of billing. And also this is the new console, and you have this ability here to create sort of applications and, custom views that are specific to how you and your organization are using AWS, instead of how we think you're using AWS. Okay, free tier usage also more front and center here, the ability to forecast whether or not you're on a trend towards exceeding the free tier. So really, really happy to see this. A lot of customers happy to see this as well too. This helps to avoid, if you do exceed the free tier, you'll get notified and can even programmatically track this. Okay, so here's that Express One Zone. This is really more of an S3 optimization, but you can now, any data access pattern that you had that like required single-digit millisecond latency, you can now switch to what's called the One Zone. You do lose a little bit of the high availability because you are pinned to a single zone, but just remember that a zone within AWS is actually multiple data centers, one or typically more than one. In all the cases I can think of off the top of my head, they're more than one. So even if a single data center goes down, there's still resiliency within a zone. However, the trade-off is that you get super fast access, digit millisecond access. So opens up a whole new set of use cases for S3. For example, there's now mount points directly for Kubernetes, and there's a container storage interface, often called CSI interface, for S3. EFS also has some improvements here. So 250,000 read IOPS and 50,000 write IOPS. For the, yes, EFS is our managed network file system. There's a really cool talk about distributed timekeeping. There's now this Amazon TimeSync service, which if you have the need to keep your servers, your instances in a cluster to all be synced with a, within 1 millisecond. And so there are use cases for this, different like distributed transactions and syncing. So classically, the problem has been that you can't guarantee that these instances will be, they can typically diverge by, I don't know, 5 seconds over every year or something like that, which is way too much for anything, that where you do require that synchronization. So there was a really cool talk on the first night. This was the Peter DeSantis talk where he was talking about there's actually like so there's an atomic clock that's involved, a whole set of atomic clocks. There's like redundancy for the atomic clock in case the atomic clock goes down somehow. I mean, it was just absolutely incredible to see how much was actually put into this new time sync service. So, pretty cool stuff. Now, the reason I mentioned that is because that's a cornerstone to some of, this new concept that I had introduced at the very beginning called limitless. So a limitless database just lets you continue to scale out. There's essentially no limit to how much data you could store with a single cluster. And this is all made possible because of the Amazon TimeSync service. So TimeSync was actually an internal thing that was being used, and in typical AWS fashion, they take something that's working really well internally and they expose it to customers and put it behind a managed service. Also, cornerstone to the Elastic Cache serverless option, which is now GA. This is something a lot of customers have been asking for. Typically, when you were setting up Redis or Memcache using Elasticache, you had to think about the instance type, had to think about how much memory was there, had to, per instance. Now it's just serverless, and all you do is just continue to put data in and get data out. I already talked about some of that. Zero ETL with Amazon Redshift. Also zero ETL. So basically, this is all these different data sources getting into Redshift, right? So I want to get data from my operational databases, into my data warehouse. And typically, you would have to write a Glue job, or you would have to write a Spark job and do all kinds of tricks. Now there's just what's called zero ETL, and it's all, it's spreading throughout all of our different data stores. There's an ongoing commitment to zero ETL going forward, all these different services, and even OpenSearch, DynamoDB. Okay, let's see. And I think this is going to conclude. I think I have 1 or 2 slides left. We're only 6 or 8 minutes, or we'll probably end 8 or 9 minutes over here. But join the party. Party Rock actually came out. This was a pre-invent, what is classically called pre-invent launch, and got a whole lot of buzz. Absolutely obnoxious color scheme. Apparently, this is what the kids like these days. Apparently. And what was funny was, so stepping back, what Party Rock is it's a way to very quickly build applications. You can build very, very powerful applications with just natural language. And so, and you can it's got a whole bunch of pre-built components, Party Rock components here where and do all kinds of fun stuff. So, and then during reInvent, back to the color scheme, the folks that were working the booth that were talking about Party Rock actually had on those obnoxious construction, like yellow reflective, vests. So yeah, funny little thing there. Okay, so that's it. Now it's time to go build. And thanks so much. Check out the book, check out the YouTube channel that I posted here in the chat. And if you do have questions, can you type them in here? I do have to run to another meeting, however, so maybe just ping me directly. I did see some hands being raised here, but I do have to shut down. So have a good holiday, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking with us during the year and supporting us and giving us, good tips on what we should include in the book. We've been running surveys throughout the year and talking to a lot of different folks, asking and finding out what they wanted to see in a book titled Generative AI on AWS. Also, thanks so much. If you're an AWS customer, we've been taking your feedback and really fed into all of these releases I just spoke about. So see you in 2024, everyone. Thank you.